Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I will be explaining how I painted this wintry landscape scene. So let's start. So first I sprayed the paper with the spray bottle to create sort of a movement of the paint across my paper, and I applied the blue starting from the top. In this case I used a mixture of cobalt blue and manganese to give it a bit of a cool feel of the evening sky. And I'm just dropping in hues wet in wet. In this case I am adding towards the left side a bit of yellow ochre, and I will be adding now a bit more yellow and actually orange. So I usually mix my orange out of primaries, which is lemon yellow, can be any red you have, really a warm red. So the orange you mix, it's warmer and bright. So here I'm just really carrying on adding and intensifying the hues on the paper, and just taking advantage of the bead that is creating at the bottom, as you see now, just taking it down to the level of the trees. The paper is still nice and wet, so this is what you want. In this case, I'm lifting a bit of clouds, so I really want to keep the sky at the top very, very bright. I'm creating a sort of sun. It didn't really come out at the end because I was just adding the trees and I lost it, but I was trying to just have a sort of a light spot there. And then next step is just mixing a bit of color for the trees. Sorry, for the clouds first. So I'm working wet in wet both for the clouds and later on for the trees that you will see on the horizon. For the clouds I used a mixture of lavender, which I love for creating nice and bluish clouds. And in this case, dropping them wet into wet to create this fuzzy look and a bit of lost and found. I'm adding a bit more of burnt sienna to the lower cloud for a bit of variation, just a bit more browny hue to the gray. And this will be very, very simple sky for me. I don't want to make it too complex. Complexity I'm just keeping to the bottom of the page. So in this case, at this point, I'm dropping in the cobalt blue for the distant mountain. I want to keep it nice and bright. It was like that in my reference photo. And the color I put before, which is basically a yellow ochre, so warm yellow and an orange, is allow me to create these very vibrant blues. When we put like complementary colors one on top of each other, it often creates this very, very vibrant look. I'm checking on the side how is drying out, and in this case I just left the top of the trees. I was thinking of adding wet in wet, but then the paper was drying, so I didn't want to put them in when it's half dry, half wet. And risking having some cauliflower, so I just left it, and I will do it later on dry paper. I just take advantage of the wetness of the paper and drop it in some very, very dark mixture of for the trees. In this case is a very dark green, and that was made out of the Winsor blue, which is a cool blue. I think it's Winsor blue red shade, but it's still quite cool. And lifting a bit just to create a variation of light and shadow. And the mixture was Winsor blue, always burnt sienna, which darkens quite a lot the hues, and a yellow. It was probably Sennelier yellow light. And I'm just basically creating these random shapes, trying to keep a bit of variety. It's always a good practice not to make the same shape or the same brush stroke. Across the line of trees, across a single shape. Just keep it a bit various so the eye is entertained. And with again a dark mixture, I'm going down and creating these areas of patches of ground coming out of the snow. That time I took the photo was in the Alps, basically quite near my hometown, and it was not very cold, so there was snow of course, but it was sort of melting. And there were patches of exposed ground, so I just wanted to recreate this feel of the snow being there and also melting away. So I'm just adding these hues. They're mainly a mixture of burnt sienna, as you see, Cobalt that gives a bit of coolness to it and creates a darker brown in places. And sometimes I add a bit of ultramarine blue if I want an even darker mixture. In this moment, I'm just reinforcing the hues on the trees, so I just want to add a bit more contrast near the house. The house is sort of the focus of the painting, so I want to keep a bit of contrast there more than in other places. I'm adding the burnt sienna. Again, I don't want like a very, very colorful house. It needs to sort of disappear in the landscape, but I still want it to be visible. The roof will be white, of course, for the snow, and I want it to basically, I want to lose an edge between the roof and the top of this sort of slope that is half hiding the house. The lost edge will be there because we have snow on the top of the roof, snow on the slope, and there is no distinction between the two, other than the pencil line, which normally I just leave them there, I don't mind. But you can always erase them and you really have a lost edge there. I'm adding a bit of color. I recently bought this Winsor blue tube and I'm loving it. It's very vibrant. So this was the first painting I did with that. I normally use Prussian blue and I love the vibrancy. So I'm just adding it into the painting just for, you know, added touches here and there. There's definitely not blue in a landscape like that, but I think it gives a bit more of an abstract feel. So I was just, you know, experimenting with that. So I'm just lifting here and there, preserving the white of my bridge. There was no bridge in the photo, but I wanted to add it just to, you know, lead the eye and connect the left-hand side of the painting to the house. So some way of going towards the house for the people of the painting and for the eye as well. So just going around and painting the edges of the stream. One thing that I really liked of my reference photo was the brightness of the stream. So it was all very sort of not overcast, but the light was not so bright. It was an evening shot, but the stream was still very, very bright. So that's what I'm gonna do. I will give a bit of a wash with a blue, but mostly keeping basically white as the paper. Here again, I'm going in with a bit of blue, just to experiment for a bit of variation and to give a bit of a, you know, interesting touch to the painting. Here I'm adding the brown. Again, these patches of brown where snow wasn't there, and for this I'm using both, like spraying a bit to keep like the edges loose and wet. But at the same time, I'm doing as well the dry brush technique, which is very good and it's specifically useful when you're painting snow and like rough patches of ground and snow, because it allows you to have this kind of dotty surface that is basically the paint catching the surface and the uneven surface of the paper. So again, here I'm spraying a bit, just keeping it loose. I don't want to have shapes that are too tight. I normally like to keep it a bit more to the unpredictable you know, side of things. And just going in with blue, now connecting a bit the shapes and adding in the right hand corner. Again with the same mixture, cobalt blue or ultramarine and burnt sienna. These are basically the three colors I use the most and I keep buying, but they're very useful. They can create very nice grays, very nice browns. Now I'm going in on the left hand side and I'm leaving a bit of the snow, so towards the bottom of the stream of the slope on the left, and I'm going in to create basically the left hand side, which will be all trees up to the top. I want to keep it a bit loose and very wet, with hues charged in wet to give a bit of variety. My mix is again the same here for the brown, so a blue and burnt sienna, and I'm just going there, well, at the moment wet on dry, because that side of the paper dried completely, as you can see. And I will be adding the other mixes, like darker and thicker mixes, on top of this wash for the trees. So for this wash, I'm just going in again with a bit of blue, It's well, basically against the sun, so we don't have a lot of detail. It's in shadow. I'm going in with the dry brush and mixing with a bit more water, blue, and I think at this point I added a bit of alizarin crimson to have a bit of purple as well, mixing basically alizarin crimson and the blue. Lot of burnt sienna, as you can see. And now I'm creating with these sort of diagonal brush strokes the slope behind the trees, which it will be basically slightly visible. This now the mix is much darker. That's one of the rules of watercolor. Whenever you want to drop colors in, the mix needs to be drier than what it is there on the paper. And otherwise you're getting some backgrounds or cauliflowers, which are great if you want to have them, but it's not always, you know, they're not always appropriate. So here I'm just creating the tree shapes very, very loosely, just to give it a feel, and then the eye will reconstruct the shape. It's something that we want to suggest shapes, suggest objects, but then it's the eye of the viewer that really reconstructs what we are suggesting. I think that's the beauty of painting loosely. I just love it. So charging in more and more hues, darker and darker. And again, here you see it's a bit more purplish, so I definitely added the alizarin crimson, which I haven't used in the rest of the painting, but is not as, you know, visible to be distracting. So this is the next step. I like it very much, to lift. So I just got a brush, dampen it, and then dry it on a tissue or a kitchen paper, and then going in and lifting the paper. This needs to be done a few times, because every time you do, you collect a bit of paint, so you need to clean the brush, dry it, and go back in again. But it creates a quite nice and soft highlight on, in this case, on my trees, on the right hand side of the trees. Here we go. So a bit more. I didn't do more on the top. I quite like those kind of orangey hues coming in. It looks like sort of like rays, probably the sun. And here I wanted to give a bit of a hint of the branches, so the highlights on the branches, and I did it with a palette knife. And really like it. It's something that it looks, you know, something very thought about, something very detailed, these branches, and actually it's just a very swift movement, and you have the effect of highlight on the branches. It's a quite effective technique. As I said, I went in to to put a bit of blue on the stream, but not too much. I kept it mostly white, just to preserve the light. So that was the first step, just adjusting here and there, lifting. I was quite happy with the effect of the trees in the background of the house. I will reinforce and add more like darker hues, so create some darker tones there in a while in the video. Just adding a bit of grass here and there. Not thinking too much about it, just some random things. Always keeping in mind, do different things. Don't you know, repeat the same shape everywhere, otherwise the eye gets bored. On the left hand side, where I just painted the grasses, I left deliberately the white like that, like unfinished. I like to leave some areas unfinished in my paintings. A few grasses here and there. It was quite a various slope with patches and grasses, so that's what I wanted to represent as well. So I was quite happy with the left hand side, the trees, but I had to go in and add some darker mixes and darker hues later on. You'll see why. Here, yeah, I'm just creating a bit of a straighter line on the top of the roof of the house, and adding a few touches here and there, just to create a bit of a more interesting line of the stream. Yes, I added just a few touches to the bridge, just to make it stand out a bit more, but at the same time not too much. I like to leave this feeling of seeing, not not being exactly sure what you're looking at, where everyone can really see what they want in the painting. And then that's the risk. I love painting so much that I would spend like a lot of time just fussing about adding few details, and that's good. It's you know, if you like, but then it's always also ideal to know when to stop. Really, sometimes it's easy to overwork a painting, and it happened to me so many times. In the sky, I was very happy. It was very, very light, and that's what was the look I was really going for. I didn't want it to be too blue to compete in a way with the mountain. Here I'm creating just a bit the chimney and the smoke coming out of the house, which I kind of like it. It gives a bit of life to the painting. And the smoke was done, basically I did it with the lifting technique, so using a wet brush, going in on the paper with a wet brush, and then blotting out the excess with a dry tissue. So this creates basically the white, the lighter shade on the paper of the smoke. Here I'm drying out completely the paper because I want to go in and basically paint a light blue wash over the snow to give the evening feel. It's not as bright, it's not in the sun, it's actually in the shade. So I need the paper to be completely dry. And this is what I'm doing. I'm drying as well on the stream. There was quite thick paper, quite a lot of paint, thick paint, and on the trees as well. So I need to make sure that everything is very dry, not to disturb the washes I've already put on the paper. So here I'm just doing a few touches here and there, adjusting, lifting some areas I don't really like. They are too dark in this case, so just removing a bit with the lifting technique. And yeah, just some touches here and there. So the blue I use for this just over light wash, light layer over the snow is cobalt blue and a touch of manganese. This makes I like to use for the snow shades. It's bright, it's delicate. I think it works very well, and it's a very watery mix. I don't want to add any strong paint. It needs to be very transparent and just giving this look of evening light. So in well, glowing snow in the evening. So as you see, it's quite watery. It's running on the paper. And it's creating this nice bead that I can carry on down to the bottom of the paper as I'm doing. It will always dry even lighter. As we know, watercolors, they dry maybe 30% lighter. So we need to think about that. When I put down, I thought maybe it's too blue, but then I remember, you know, it'll dry. So it will still look like bright snow, but with a hint of blue, of evening light. So put it on the left hand side as well, on the snow on this slope. And suddenly I noticed that by putting this light, I got rid of the whitest part of the paper. And this created like an imbalance with the left hand side where the trees are, that they were not standing out anymore because I changed the balance and the balance between the tones of my painting. Now the sky is the lightest tone, which is what I really wanted, but I felt I had to add a bit more of darker hues on the trees to intensify a bit. So I went in for the dark part of the tree, so the left side, the light is coming through, although there is no direct light from the sun, but it's basically reflected light from the snow, so the lit part of the tree will be the right hand side part. So I'm keeping the dark paint and dark mixes to the left, creating this 3D, three-dimensional effect to the trees. Up to the bottom of the trees, although in the back and towards the center, I want to keep it a bit more loose, a bit less defined, because I don't want to create definition everywhere. I want a definition mostly in the two trunks I have, towards the viewer, towards in the foreground, and then keep it a bit more lost and found in the background. Again, I don't want to define too much. It's not, I think I want this as a sort of a accompanying like character. Is not the main character of the scene and the main focus, and I don't want it to draw too much attention, but still I felt it needed a bit more intensity. So I'm just dropping in again dark mix, a bit drier as well, so we will have a bit of dry brush, which is very good also for the bark of the trees. And creating these shapes. It's always good, I think, in watercolors, think of objects more like shapes rather than items or objects to keep sort of this abstract feel to the painting. So adding more hues here. The mix is again a dark made of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue in this case, because the cobalt doesn't give the very, very dark mix. When I want like something that looks almost black, never use black. It's too dull for me in watercolors. It's always better to create it out of either primaries or burnt sienna and blues. It means that every time is a different black, more blue, more brownish, but definitely more vibrant. So this was basically what I did on the left hand side. I didn't want to overdo. I didn't paint up to the top of the trees. I wanted to keep it like that, undefined, like it's out of our main focus. It's something we're kind of seeing with the corner of our eye. Here I'm just adding a bit more details, so some darker areas, bringing out more like the trunk of this tree, as you see, by putting the dark paint behind. The lit part of the tree just really stands out very well. And I'm adding a bit more darker hues around. I'll be doing that in the trees in the background and around the house, just to basically create more contrast where I want the eye of the viewer to go. Again, few weeds and trees and grasses here and there. Just don't seem to be able to stop painting sometimes. It's always good maybe sometimes just to step away, make a cup of tea and go back, and what's really missing, and you will know if you are overdoing or if it's really something that you need to add to the painting. So you have to look at it with fresh eyes sometimes. In the stream, I intensified the dark on the edge of the string, just to bring out the whiteness and the reflectivity of the water even more. It looks darker than it is, to be honest. In the video, it's not as dark. I have uploaded a full a picture of this painting on my Instagram profile, so you can have a look at it. It's the same name, Chiara Boturi Watercolors. And I think here the painting was pretty much finished. Just adding, as I said, a bit more darker hues for the trees, just creating sort of rows of trees, the first one darker and then progressively disappearing in the background. And the mix here is again a mix of Winsor blue, yellow, and Sennelier yellow light, which is a warm yellow, and also some burnt sienna, which always helps to darken the mixes. Here, just going around and creating negatively the shape of the house. And I like the house like that, so there is a found edge between the dark of the trees and the frontal, the facade of the house, but then there is the lost edge we were saying of the roof and the slope, so basically a connect shape going from the roof to the slope, no interruption. And this was it, just signing it. And I hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments, and see you at the next painting. Bye.